Hi. Allow record. Hello? Oh. Hi, Gerard. I sent the Zoom link for the in the email yesterday. Do you need I sent you to the WhatsApp now? Okay, I will resend to you. I see you. See you soon. Bye.
他没有那个，
没有他
没那个，
他有他没看，他太忙了，没看邮件。这个
哦，
没事没事，他给我打电话。应该马上就来了。我现在路上吧。
你那光线还挺好的哈，我这怎么都调的不好看。
我这是有灯啊。我这是灯。对，他还挺好的，他其实。
一会儿我打个招呼我就退下去了。
可以认识一下也好，以后有什么还可以。
他叫什么？
他叫 Gerard。Gerard，李赖斯 ，Gerard Lyons， 然后他起了个名字叫李赖斯。然后他是原来 Boris 的首席经济顾问，在那个前段时间就是英格兰央行那个行长，他被提名了，他因为之前他有几个库，他比较忙，他说，后来我说不行，我们那个我们的 editor 需要明天写稿子，来不及了。现在斯坦默说要 circuit breaker 全国封锁，英国又回到这个长痛短痛的纠结当中。
不可能，昨天就说了，不可能，我觉得他都推出这个3级的这个措施了，他不可能听工党的，工党也就是拉选票，他就是拉那部分人选票了，就想实行全国封锁那部分，必须得意见分明。
来了。Hi, Gerard. Hi, Gerard. How are you? Long time no see.
Long time no see. Apologies.
You look quite good. Busy today?
Yes. Now, let me make sure I get the... Hope you're keeping well, first and foremost, and you look good.
Yeah, the lens are good. Yeah, good. Yeah, so... Yeah. Is it on your laptop or computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, if it's on the screen, it's too high. I put it on the laptop. Is that better, that one?
I think, so. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah?
What would you prefer?
I think if your eyesight is yeah, just parallel. It's not. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, hold on. You haven't plugged it in. Oh, I tell you what. I've not plugged my. 1 second. My son has just come in to sort me out.
Oh, I know you have a daughter. I don't know. You also have a son. Sorry.
I've got 2 daughters and a son.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
So if it doesn't work, it's not my fault.
You can blame on your son.
Can you start off and rejoin?
I'll rejoin. The best thing to do. I'll come back in.
他那个就是他有点看着上头，他要这样，是
Okay.
吧？
Yeah.
直着就好。他是不是搁的有点低？要平行的是好，这样是最好。
Yeah. The camera 那个
搁得太低了。
镜子要平行，这个视线是平的。
对，其实我这个都是搁在底下，我这有点低，往下看。那他那可能是这样。
哦，就照鼻孔啊，是吧？
对，他是这样看，他往上搁低了。
哦。
他要搁平行是这样。
哦，他有个儿子，我不知道，我只知道他有闺女，好厉害。
他是什么中国银行的顾问？
哦，是的，那个叫什么非执行董事。
啊，我以前采访过他。
哦，
我一看你说名儿我不知道，我一看人我就记起来。
哦，是。Maybe on the first button of your yes, a little bit, not too high, not leave too much space on your head, above your head. Can you hear me? 听不到。
还没连上音频呢。
哦，是分开的。Hello。昨天的 Wi-Fi 的 signal yesterday was not that good yesterday. Hi, Gerard. Can you hear me?
还没连上声可能。
Yeah.
你时间够吗？要是不够我就撤了，半小时。
没有，不是你已经在这儿了，他就已经是40分钟，没事，快到点了，他会提示的。如果提示的不够，我会跟他讲。我估计应该够，咱们抓紧时间吧，半小时已经够长的了。
对，已经够长，应该够。
Hello, you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes, good.
Okay.
You can make.
Okay. Does that look okay, or tell me what's what?
Can you make your space a little bit squeezed, and then you can look in the
I mean less screen.
Yeah, less screen. I think now it's better. Yeah. Okay. Her.
Okay.
I think it's better.
It's my colleague. Her. He used to interview you in
Yeah.
China, I think.
Yeah, we did the interview at the Bank of China event. Do you remember?
Yes,
Beautiful.
I do remember. Good to speak to you again. And
yeah, good to meet you again.
Sorry about the mucking about in the time.
Right. So I will ask you firstly, and if Her had anything to add on, he will ask you later. Okay.
So I will put on silent.
Okay. Right, now it's recording. Thank you for you to join us program.
I was going to say, if you could introduce me as a independent non-executive director of Bank of China in the UK, or as a board member of the Bank of China in the UK.
Either, which one do you prefer to?
What sounds better in Chinese?
It's okay. we can talk. Yeah, we can use that. We will maybe put that economic and non-executive.
Economist and independent.
Okay.
Non-executive director of the Bank of China in the UK.
All right, we use that. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
And everything's okay? Yes. The picture's fine.
Good. Everything's good.
Quite good. That's good. Good. Sorry. Apologies. I never do what you should never do. Let someone see you combing your hair. But, okay. Very good. Okay.
Yeah. So according to the World Economy Outlook, released by IMF on October the 13th, China's recovery has been quite fast, even faster than expected. So how do you look at the China's economy during the pandemic and compare with the European countries and US?
Well, whichever economy one is looking at the moment, whether it's China or the UK or any other economy, they've been impacted by a combination of factors: health issues, economic issues, and policy issues. Now, the important thing is that China was impacted earlier than other countries by the pandemic. It responded very strongly, and the policy response, both in health and in the economic terms, has given the economy a much stronger footing. Now, the third quarter GDP figures in China are likely to confirm that the economy has accelerated further from the second quarter. Second quarter, it was just over 3% growth. In the third quarter, it's likely, in my view, to be around 5.5% growth. And the latest monthly economic figures confirm that the Chinese economy ended the third quarter very strongly. September seemed to be a very strong month. So all of those characteristics suggest that the Chinese economy is ending the year relatively robustly, and that gives confidence about predicting a stronger outlook as we look into 2021. But it is important to stress that China, like other economies, will still be vulnerable in the vaccine gap to any re-escalation of the health crisis. So whether it's China or any other economy, one needs to look at the combination of health, economic, and policy issues. But so far, the data confirms that the Chinese economy has recovered solidly, and therefore I think, health issues considered, one should be optimistic about prospects in 2021.
Mm-hmm. So what's the implications for the resilience of China's economy, for the world economy, and for the European countries, considering they are struggling to keep the balance between the economic recovery and containing the virus?
Yeah, well, because we are in a vaccine gap phase, the risks associated with the health crisis clearly are uppermost in policymakers and in many people's and companies' minds. That being said, what we are seeing, even in Europe, is a situation where even though the virus is now a big issue again, it's a very different situation to earlier in the year. Now, as an economist, I have done a lot of work with a colleague at University College London, adding economics into the epidemiological models. And what one finds is that behaviors is very important. Tracking and trace, testing and behaviors, those three factors, track and trace, testing and behaviors, are key characteristics of how economies will be impacted by and respond to the virus. Now, therefore, even though there's a degree of uncertainty, I'm relatively optimistic about global economic prospects in 2021. In the initial phase, in the next few months, one needs to differentiate between those sectors of economies that will be able to recover because of pent-up demand and because of the policy stimulus, versus the fact that there will be some parts of the UK, European, and the world economy that will not be able to return fully to normal while we have no vaccine. That's hospitality, tourism type sectors. So therefore one needs to differentiate between sectors. But even allowing for that, the profile is relatively clear. I think the US economy will, like the Chinese economy, start to rebound solidly next year. I think the US economy will return to its pre-crisis trend probably by next summer. The European economies, it will vary slightly. But the important thing to stress is that the global policy stimulus has been very significant. The way I would characterize it is that we are now seeing a combination of unconventional monetary policy and unconventional fiscal policy globally. We have had unconventional monetary policy since the global financial crisis of 2008, but even so, we've had a further extension of that as a result of this pandemic. Central banks across the globe are seeing their balance sheets increase in size, they're printing money, they're adding liquidity. Meanwhile, this crisis has shown that on the fiscal side, debt levels globally have risen very significantly. Now, China, like other major economies, needs to be very sensitive to this. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, we are in a situation where in China and in other major economies, inflation is low. Low inflation allows interest rates and bond yields to remain low, and that allows central banks and governments to be able to tolerate the combination of unconventional monetary and unconventional fiscal policy. And the combination of that fiscal and monetary stimulus will allow not just the Chinese economy, but the global economy to recover relatively solidly over the next year or so, taking into account those health issues.
Mm-hmm. Apart from the lessons or maybe experiences learned from China, is there any connection between China and the European economy? I mean, will European countries benefit from the speedily recovery of China in this pandemic?
Well, in answer to your question, I differentiate between two key factors here. One is the structural or longer term trend, and the second is the cyclical factor. And clearly, in terms of the cyclical influence, the European, including the UK economy, will be impacted and affected by what is happening in China. But let's take each of those issues in turn. On the structural side, in the wake of the global financial crisis of 2008, there was a perception that we were moving towards a G20 world. And the G20, for a number of years, became almost the dominant global policy forum. But then in recent years, we've moved away from G20, I would argue, more back towards G7. But what we are now seeing, in my view, is an emergence of a G2, China and America. That doesn't mean that other economies are not important, but I think we are seeing two dominant global economies. And in terms of a global region, the real economic activity will be in the Indo-Pacific region, from India in the west, through East Asia, including China, including Japan, including to a lesser extent ASEAN, and stretching over towards America in the east. In that respect, the United Kingdom and the European Union are slightly peripheral. They need to reposition themselves in this changing structural global economy. And that is a real challenge for Europe. And it helps explain why it makes sense for the United Kingdom to reposition itself with Brexit outside the European Union. So that structural influence is a key one. It means China, like America, will in some respects court Europe for other geopolitical reasons as well. But in terms of the cyclical economic influence, there is no doubt that a stronger global economy helps all countries, particularly those countries, including China, that want to be more international in their outlook. And naturally, Western Europe will be impacted both by what is happening in America and what is happening in China. So clearly there is an interaction at a global level, and there's an interaction in terms of that regional dynamic between Western Europe and China.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any concern about the decoupling from China in the world, and will the European economy suffer from that the tension between the two superpower, China and US?
No, I'm not worried. I think one needs to step back and look at the size of the global economy. The world economy has continued to increase in size throughout this whole century. And that's despite the fact that we've already seen not just the global financial crisis, but we're now seeing the global health crisis as well. So the trend has been up for the global economy. The characteristic is that the global economic cake is getting bigger. The challenge, though, becomes how you cut that cake. More of that slice of that bigger cake is being seen by China and also by America. That poses challenges for Western Europe. Within Western Europe, the additional challenge is how we divide the cake within our own countries, because we have a very sort of healthy, generous benefit system in Western Europe, but we have also in a number of countries in Western Europe, aging populations. Now, Britain is very different. Britain is still a relatively young population. My projections suggest that over the next 35 years, the UK will become the biggest economy in Western Europe, displacing Germany. And that's through a combination of perspiration and inspiration. Perspiration being demographics, inspiration being increased innovation, increased investment, and changing the supply side of the economy. Now, coming back to China, the challenge China faces as we move into its 14th five-year plan is that combination of those inspiration and perspiration factors as well, Perspiration in terms of demographics. China, as we know, has an aging population. That suggests that the trend rate of growth of China will start to decelerate, slow down. At the same time, we're seeing the need for China to continue to move up the value curve in terms of greater innovation and also share in the fourth industrial revolution in terms of digitalization and other features. So the challenges that China faces are similar to challenges faced by other countries, but of course, the nature of the challenge is slightly different from every country's perspective, given demographic factors and other influences at home. But I would actually be quite constructive about the outlook. And when you say decoupling, this whole dual circulation issue is a very interesting theme. It's a neat way of differentiating between domestic influences in China and the global influence, both in China and China's increased influence on the rest of the world. So it's a combination of both domestic influences and global influences and how they come together.
Mm-hmm. China has unveiled a so-called dual circulation strategy to cut its dependencies on U.S. Either a market or the technology in the long term. Do you think that strategy will work in the future to help China to go through the difficulties?
Well, I think it's an interesting concept, but I think one needs to take it both in the two separate parts. In terms of the domestic circulation, the domestic economy, there's no doubt that China needs to continue to move up the value curve. There are many different challenges within China, but China has overcome them in different ways. If we look at the success of the whole Shenzhen region over the last 40 years, and we look at the aspirations for the Greater Bay Area, what I think is important in the next 5-year plan in China is not only to have a realistic growth forecast, but to have clear ambition in terms of the domestic economy. That ambition has been there in the past, and it's about seeing more people sharing domestic economic success. And that's not just more people themselves, but in terms of the regions of the country as well. So in terms of the domestic agenda, yeah, I think based on the track record to date, one should be optimistic. But China needs to learn from America and also from the UK and 1 or 2 other countries in terms of the importance of deepening and broadening its capital markets. If China really wants to become more self-sufficient, then one needs those capital markets to play an even bigger role. And that is, I think, maybe already within the aspirations and the plans. In terms of the international circulation, I would not see China decoupling at all. I would see China playing a more international role. But clearly, there's always the challenge when you have a successful major economy like America and a new emerging economy like China, where the size of the economy is so great, but income per head within China still needs to increase significantly further. So I would see China playing an international role in a number of different ways. As its capital markets become bigger, that really poses questions about what will happen to the Chinese currency. This has been an issue. I spoke at the second Shanghai Import Expo a couple of years ago, and the future of the Chinese currency and its internationalization was then a key aspect. Now one moves it into the digital space, that whole area becomes important. The Belt Road Initiative, China has to obviously face up to the criticisms that have been levied against it in terms of the Belt Road. But at the same time, it's quite clear that the Belt Road has been a phenomenal success in terms of its expansion and the growth it's brought. But I think there's greater sensitivity about the relationship between China and the other countries on the Belt Road. If I take it from a UK perspective, I can see the City of London being a good place to do business in and to do business from. The rule of law, London's global reach makes China, the UK, sort of natural allies in some respects in terms of developing the Belt Road, although naturally the UK will want to have a clear, robust relationship with China on many different issues. So in answer to your question, it's quite complex. One needs to differentiate between the domestic circulation and the international circulation. But in answer to your question, I would be positive about it being a successful policy outcome, because a lot of the issues have already been developed through recent 5-year plans, and the success is already evident. But China is moving to the next stage of development, which means with an aging population, it becomes ever more important to not only have clear strategies, but to actually execute them and deliver upon them to achieve sustainable growth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with you. China really still need, especially the international markets and in the finance areas. But given the geopolitical uncertainty ahead, how do you look at the UK-China relations? Will the government have a long-term, consistent, clear strategy to China currently? Or if they don't have, what's your suggestion to them? And will the policy tend to be more hawkish, considering the influence by the U.S. government, or maybe after the election, will that be hawkish as well?
Yeah, in terms of UK-China, the relationship has been on a clear upward trend, and it was called a golden relationship when President Xi Jinping visited the UK a few years ago. The relationship maybe has cooled slightly since, but I would still be quite constructive about what lies ahead. In terms of how one should view it, what I have said publicly here in the UK and have said on the radio and written about is the need for the UK government to have a clear strategic aim and to differentiate on the one side between security, intelligence, and, shall we say, geopolitical issues versus economic and financial issues. And therefore, there needs to be clear lines of demarcation, because it's quite evident that in economic, financial, and business terms, that the relationship between the United Kingdom and China has strengthened in recent years. Indeed, just look at the Bank of China's strong representation in the City of London, and indeed look at the role of other financial institutions from China here in the UK. Also, one has seen significant Chinese inward investment into the UK. And before this pandemic, there was increased flows of Chinese students and also of tourists to the UK. So I think that relationship in economic, financial, and business terms has been quite strong. But what one needs to see, in my view, is a clear separation between what one could call those strategic political areas and those non-political but economic, financial, and business areas. And one should remember that the economic and financial dialogue set up by the Chinese and the UK government, which was taking place very successfully each year before the pandemic, has set a strong foundation. So I think important not to focus too much on short-term factors, but it's clear from a political perspective here in the UK that there's a desire for a more robust relationship with China. I think that's the best way to describe it. But I think that will be alongside what I think will be a successful economic, business, and financial relationship. And also, very importantly, in my view, for the United Kingdom to explain clearly to China and to other countries about the UK's aims and ambitions with Brexit. I think there's a danger in other parts of the world that people misinterpret Brexit as the UK becoming inward-looking and insular. What one is clearly seeing is a desire for the UK to retain its sovereignty, hence the desire to have Brexit, and against that backdrop for the UK to build a very strong global presence, and for the UK to have a sensible trade deal with more countries across the globe. Recently, the UK signed a trade deal with Japan, and there's a great desire for the UK to sign a trade deal with the United States, and also for the UK to have a strong, robust trading relationship with China as well.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. You know, you have covered some points I would like to ask, but you already covered some of them. So I would like to mention the digital currency because you said you mentioned that. So what's your thoughts on the breakthrough in the digital currency launched by China, Central Bank of China, and also what's the main pillars to underpin the success of digital currency, no matter in China and EU?
Okay, well, I think that the context in which this needs to be discussed is a combination of changing economics and changing sort of technology stroke the fourth industrial revolution. What one is seeing in economic terms are new trade corridors. Indeed, the Belt Road Initiative is a reflection of that. So these new trade corridors are increased flows of goods, services, more people traveling, more capital being exported or imported. So greater flows of a whole combination of factors, and that includes China, Europe, China, South Asia, China, Africa, and also includes America playing a big role as well. So what that implies in the future is that more countries, in my view, will start to manage their own currency against a basket of currencies of the countries with which they trade. Now, it doesn't suggest that the dollar's dominance changes overnight, but it does suggest, as the Chinese have pointed out for some time, it's an opportunity to address whether it should be a case of not just the dollar, but the dollar and other currencies. The data at the moment still suggests that the dollar is in a very dominant position and will remain so. But then that comes on to the second aspect about the whole digital space. Clearly, the fourth industrial revolution, new technology, allows great opportunities in a whole host of areas, and the digital currency space is one of those. But I do think, and I come back to a point I made earlier on, there's a need in my mind for China to continue to deepen and broaden its capital markets, because what one needs to see is people wanting to have more assets in, say, China, and also it suggests an opening up of the economy and of the financial sector in a way in which China might be moving towards, but is still some considerable way from achieving. So I think the digital currency argument is a very strong one. What I like about it is the robustness with which it's been discussed and the strong foundations it's been given within China. And what we've seen in the past is that when new technology comes along, it can suddenly result in changes happening far quicker than some people expect. Mm-hmm. So it's a case of watch this space, as one would say here in the UK.
Mm-hmm. All right, and let's get back to the pandemic again. Today, Sir Keir Starmer urges the Prime Minister to do a circuit breaker for the national lockdown again. So do you agree? It seems the UK and the European countries are struggling to deal with both the economy crisis and also the health crisis at the same time. So how to go through the dilemma? What's your suggestion or advices to that?
Well, here in the United Kingdom, and indeed in most countries in Western Europe, the focus is on trying to keep the virus in check while allowing economies to either continue to rebound after the recession earlier this year or to sort of start to recover more strongly. So it's about getting the balance right between addressing the health issue and the economic issue. Ironically, here in the UK, I think that the government has finally got to the position that it should have reached a few months ago by actually addressing issues at a local level, by making sure that it sort of gets the combination of testing, track and trace, and behaviours right, and emphasising the importance of behaviours. So I think the UK government has actually also made it simpler by advocating a three-tier process. Earlier this summer, I advocated a traffic light approach with Professor Ormerod of UCL, red, amber, and green. In some respects, the UK government has moved towards that. So I say ironically because I think we should have implemented this policy 3 or 4 months ago. And up to now, many of the opponents of the government have supported the government in what it's done so far. Now they're criticising it at the very time, and I think it has actually got to where it should have got to a few months ago. So I don't think we should have a national lockdown in the UK. What one is seeing in the UK is that the virus has returned, but it's very different to earlier this year. Earlier this year, the death rate was very high. The average age of people who have died in the UK is reported as being 81 or 82 years old. What has happened more recently is that the testing has shown an increased pickup in the virus amongst younger people. And therefore the death rate remains quite low. I think the key message is this, that we are in a vaccine gap phase. Therefore, one needs to still be cautious about the virus, but one must not react to it in a way in which it strangles the economy. And in the continued vaccine gap phase, not only must there be further efforts to find the vaccine quickly, but on an economic policy front, the UK government and the Bank of England need to continue to provide significant policy stimulus, fiscal policy stimulus and monetary stimulus. And it's a message for China as well as for the UK that in an environment of low inflation, low interest rates and low yields, there is greater space to use policy to ensure that the economy weathers this storm. But we are in a serious economic situation in the UK, in Western Europe, and indeed in some respects globally. But despite being in the serious situation, if we start to move towards a vaccine, the combination of seeing the health crisis being addressed and the significant policy easing that is already in the pipeline, monetary and in particular fiscal stimulus, will allow the UK, the Chinese and other economies to recover next year.
Great. Thank you very much. Every time your interview always give me a lot of inspiration. So I'd like to ask my colleague here, do you have any question to to Gerard? If you just ask, we have, it seems we have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I think just, thank you. I think the last question, I have one point I want to ask. So do you think the government, like in Europe, should have a balance of the short-term and long-term policies or the strategies towards the pandemic? Because as of now, we see that the government, try to reopen its economy as soon as the virus gets contained. But how do you think the government should balance between the short-term and long-term policies?
Yeah, let me answer that question by focusing on the UK. What we have in the UK is a two-speed recovery. One part of the economy is rebounding quite strongly. Online retail spending, the housing market, the construction sector. And that's recovering partly because there is still strong pent-up demand. Many people have high savings. But even that part of the economy would be vulnerable if we were to have further national lockdown or indeed continued regional lockdowns. Now, the other part of the economy that is not recovering is moribund. And that part of the economy is the hospitality sector, the tourism sector, the creative sector. Now, the creative sector in the UK is about 5.8% of the economy. And the creative sector has grown at twice the pace of the rest of the economy in recent years. So we have a two-speed economy in the UK, one part recovering strongly, another part really impacted badly by the virus. And what is happening here is that the policymakers are having to help not only all the economy, but in particular, they're having to provide additional help to the moribund part, the part that's really impacted and where the business models cannot return to normal while there is no vaccine. Now, the challenge, of course, is that if the health crisis reemerges and we start to have a lockdown, then it's scuppers the whole economy. Early this year, a national lockdown saw the UK economy almost collapse by about 20%. There's been a strong rebound in parts of the economy since. But I think the government here recognises and realises that locking down has a big negative economic effect, and also it has a negative health effect as well in non-coronavirus areas. So I think the pressure will be for not just the UK government, but one is seeing this in other European countries too, to try and be more targeted in the response to the virus. Hence the focus on regions or local areas or locking down cities in order to prevent a national lockdown. So I think there is a greater awareness of the need to try and balance up the economy and balance up the health issues. And that's partly because we saw what happened earlier this year. And it was also partly a reflection of the fact that we know that the virus has changed. The fatality rate is not as high as we feared it was. And also because those people who are more vulnerable are isolating. And those people who are catching the virus now tend to be more concentrated amongst the younger age groups. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Yes,
very good.
Ian. Hi, Gerard. So we already asked all the questions. Would you like to add on anything?
Is there any question that you wanted to have a shorter answer to that we could go through again?
I think all your answers are quite brilliant. Very concise. Yeah, very good. So we will edit and then let you know what happened. Normally, it will tend to be an article and with video and pictures and an article on the website of CCTV. I will send you the link later.
Okay, very good. Well, good to speak to you, and apologies for keeping you waiting earlier on.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.